Alright, good morning. So right now I'm going to go over Chapter 4 Practice Test long answer section for radicals. Alright, so this pen might actually work better. Question 19 is perimeter rational or irrational? So this is what your page should look like without the writing. So is the perimeter rational or irrational if the area is 28 meters squared? One thing to write first, or to say first, is this squared here does not go with our number. It doesn't mean the 28 is squared. It just means the unit, the meters, is squared. It just means that the unit is a square rather than just a straight line. Okay, because a meter is measured in a straight line, but meter squared is measured in squares. Alright, but that's beside the fact. Let's look at this square here. Our goal here is to find the perimeter. What does perimeter mean? Area means the area all inside this square, but perimeter means if you add up this side length plus this side length plus this side length plus this side length. Okay, so perimeter you're really measuring kind of just a straight distance, while area you're measuring kind of square distances. Okay, so they're kind of different things. So we want perimeter, so we got to add this plus this plus this plus this. So we got to find out what one of the side lengths are. We know it's a square, so we know they're all will be the same. So we just have to find out what it'll be. So we know the equation for area of a square is just the length squared. Okay, so overall the length squared, we need to find out what L is going to be. So we know our area is 28, so I'm going to put that in. I put it right underneath because that's what the A is. We don't know what L is yet, so let's solve for our L. It's not by itself, so let's get rid of the squared. The opposite of squared is square root, so we're going to go square root of 28 equals L. So we square rooted both sides. Okay, so now L is the square root of 28. So we know that one side length is the square root of 28. If you have 4, that's the perimeter. So our perimeter is going to be this root 28 plus root 28 plus root 28 plus root 28. So the 4 sides added together. Alright, so overall we can simplify that. That's just going to be, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of the exact same thing, so it can be 4 times root 28. There are 4 root 28s. So that's our perimeter. We know that's going to be it. But our question is it rational or irrational? At this point we can simplify this, but it won't help us in this question. So we're going to just plug it into our calculator. So we're going to take our calculator out. The light kind of makes it worse. So we can go 4 root 28, just like so. 4 times root 28. Oops. And we get 21.16601,049. So I'm going to say it is irrational by looking at that. And the answer to why is because it doesn't terminate and it doesn't repeat. We know that if it had a repeating pattern or if it stopped, we knew it was rational. It could be shown in a fraction form, but we know that this is irrational. Okay, so that one's done. Now we can move on to the next one, which is pretty similar. It's another square question. We have, what is the perimeter written in simplest radical form for this square here? So I wrote the area on the inside. We know the area is 1,134 tiny squares, or 1,134 meters squared, okay, which is a pretty big area. What is the perimeter written in simplest radical form? So let's just write what we know. We know that perimeter is going to be those 4 added up. those 4 side lengths. So we need to find out what one of the side lengths are. We know for a square, our equation is just area is equal to 1 side length squared. So we know the area is 1,134, and we get L squared. Now we have to solve for L, or do the opposite of squared, which is square root. So now I get that root 1,134 is equal to 1 side length. Okay, so if we want to find out what our perimeter is, we write our perimeter as I would add these up 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Right? I'm just going to skip ahead and write 4 of those. All right, so there, we found the perimeter. Nice, but it says it wants it in simplest form. This is not simplest form. We have to make this radical as small as possible. So let's prime factor. So 1134, I know 2 is going to go into there. That'll leave me with 567. That's kind of a tougher one, so I'm going to use my calculator and see what numbers go into there. So I figured out that when I divided, 7 would work. That leaves me with an 81. And then we know 9 times 9 and 3 times 3. So we know 1,134 is 2 times 7 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. Okay, so let's write that. P is 4 root 2 times 7 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So that's the same thing. The reason why we wrote that is because we know since the index is 2, it's not showing anything, so it's a 2. I can take out groups of 2 and switch them to 1 on the outside. So let's do that. We can take that group and that group. So we can go P equals 4 times 2 3's will turn to 1. 2 3's will turn to 1. And then I still have to write what's in here. 2 times 7. Alright, so now let's just simplify it. 4 times 3 is 12. Times 3 is 36. 2 times 7 is 14. So our simplest form, which is the exact same as 4 times root 1,134, is 36 times root 14. That's more simple because the radical is smaller. All right. Question 21. So this one has a lot of writing, but I wrote down the gist of it. It's just that. So it says a lot. It says the formula for approximate surface area square meters of a person's body is surface area equals 0.096 m 7 over 10, where m is the person's mass, in kilograms. Calculate the surface area of a person with mass 75 kilograms to the nearest hundredth. And it says in calculator. So what it's really saying is they give you an equation with 2 variables, surface area and mass. And it's saying, what is this variable when that variable is 75? That's all it's saying. Okay? These word problems can usually be very confusing, but that's all it is saying in the end. So what do is I just stick with this normal equation. If they give you an equation, you know you're going to have to use it. So surface area of a 75 kilogram person. We don't know what surface area is, so I write that again. Now I copy down everything. M, I'm going to fill in though. I know the mass that we're trying to find is 75 kilograms. And then I write the 7/10 over again. Alright. So we have this right here. And now it says in the brackets it said calculator. So I can really just type this in and then the question's done. So I'll show you how I would write it in. I'd write 0.096 times this 75. And then I'm going to put a little hat, this symbol here, which means to the exponent. But since the exponent is a fraction, I'm going to have to put brackets saying that that whole thing is up in the exponent. If you didn't have the brackets, it would say only the 7 is up in the exponent and the 10 is actually not. That's why you need the brackets. So that's my answer, and then I hit enter and it says 1.97. So I can just write that because that's what this is. It's 1.97. And now overall surface area is 1.97. And it said to the nearest hundredth. So I did round it to the nearest hundredth. We have the 10th spot and the 100th spot. So if you're rounding to the 100th, you look one more, which is the 1, and see if you round. 1 you wouldn't round. So the only last thing you have to do is you have to have a unit. So in the question it says surface area is in square meters. So you put a meter and a little square. That one wasn't so bad. This one might be a bit tougher. So here it says it says that you have a spherical space station. The rotations per minute here will depend on what your radius of your space station is here. So it's saying, what is this when this is 12.7? So it's the same type of question. Alright, it says write the answer to the nearest hundredth. So this is how I would do this. I would write it over again and fill in any information I do know. This is a pi symbol. And then R is 12.7. So I wrote it again and I just filled in that information. So now what I know about negative exponents is I don't like them, and I like them to go positive. So since this doesn't have a fraction, it's on the top, so we can place it on the bottom of a fraction and switch it positive. So I'm going to do that just because it makes more sense to me. So this 12.7 is now to the positive half, and it's on the bottom of fraction. Okay, and I know the half means the radical square root symbol, right? So I'm going to change that as well, so that's easier to type in my calculator. And then we have root 12.7. So I have that there, 42 root 5 over pi square root of 12.7. Now I can type that in my calculator a lot easier than that would be. So I'm going to go 42 square root of 5, not square, square root of 5. And I'm going to go divide, and then I'm going to put brackets saying I'm dividing by everything that's on the bottom here. So I'm going to hit pi, and then square root of 12.7, close that bracket, and close the second bracket. Alright, so overall it's saying our n, using a calculator, is 8.38, and it wants to the nearest hundredth, so we go 38, we look next door, the 8 is high, so it's 8.39. And what does n mean? We can look in the question. It's saying n means rotations per minute. So this space station rotates 8 and a bit times per 60 seconds. Alright, so that question's done. So now we go into 23. A tree farmer uses this equation. So this one's, I would say, one of the most difficult ones in this whole pretest. Is the volume is half times the diameter squared times the height of the tree. Okay, that's the equation they give you, and they say that approximates it. So we know we're going to have to use that equation. What are they saying? They're saying height is 20 times the diameter. So that's our height. That's our diameter. So height is 20 times their diameter. Okay, so that means 20 of these will make that. Volume is 230 meters cubed. What is our diameter of our tree, or our mean diameter? So here I just start with our equation. Generally, most times when you give an equation, you just want to start with that. Fill in anything you know. We know the volume is 230 meters cubed. And then I copy everything else. Do I know what diameter is? No. They give us kind of this information here. This is the hardest part. Height is 20 times the diameter. So I want to kind of make an equation for that. Height is 20 times the diameter. Is in math means equals. So height is 20 times the diameter. So we made kind of a separate little equation. We're saying that wherever you see an h, you can write 20 times the diameter. So in this equation, we see an h there. And generally in equations, if we didn't change one, we would have too many different variables. You want just one in the end. And so we're going to have d as our one in the end. So h here, instead of writing h, we can write h is 20d. So instead of writing h, we can write 20d. Alright, so if you see my equation now, I just have numbers and just the variable d. So now we can solve for it. Alright, so when I see this, I want to get the d's all by themselves, so I got to get rid of this half. So we're multiplying by a half, so let's do the opposite, divide by a half. So we're going to go 230 divide by 0.5. So we get 460. So over here we now have 460, and that got rid of that half. So now we're at d squared times 20 times d. Alright, so let's get rid of that 20 now. So the 20 is multiplying kind of everything. So how do we get rid of it? We do the opposite. We divide it on the other side. Alright, so we have 460 divided by 20. So we get 23. 23. That got rid of that 20, so now we have d squared and a d left. What do we know about exponents? We know that if it's the same base, they're both d's, then we can add the exponents. This one doesn't have one, so let's put a 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. So we get d cubed. Okay. So you can see we're getting a very small equation now, which is really helpful. D is still not by itself though. We have this cubed that's in the way. So what's the opposite of cube? Let's cube root it. So we got D is the cube root of 23. Okay? So it said, what is the mean trunk diameter of this tree to the nearest meter? And it's going to be this. Let's type it in to our calculator. I'm going to hit math button here on my calculator, math, and I want to hit this one here, cube root, and then we're going to hit 23. So overall our D is the cube root of 23, which is 2.84, but it wants it to the nearest meter, so it's just 3 meters. Alright, last question. 24. Simplify the 8th root of x times the 5th root of x cubed. Alright, so when I first see this, I just want to put it into fraction form, or into exponent form, so I can do some exponent laws. We know that one is x to the 1/8, and we know this one's x to the 3/5. There you go. So the bases are the same, so what we can do? When they're multiplying, that means we can add the tops. But this one's a tough one. So I'm going to write it on the side here. Those are fractions with different bottoms, so they're hard to add. Okay, it's probably the toughest type of thing with fractions, I would say. So here, 8. We got to get the bottoms the same first. So the trick to do it is you multiply the top and the bottom by the other one. So 8 times 5, 1 times 5. And you're allowed to do this because 5 over 5 is just 1. And you're multiplying 1 over 8 times 1. It doesn't actually change anything. So here we can times by the other one, the 8, to the top and the bottom. So that leaves us what is 1 times 5 is 5. 5 times 8 is 40. Plus 3 times 8 is 24. 5 times 8 is 40. So now the bottoms are the same. So now we can add them. Okay? What happens when you add? You keep the bottom the same, and you just add the tops. There you go. So overall, if we add them, we get to this. So now I can write from this step x to the 29 over 40. Okay? Perfect. It wants it as a radical, so let's change that back. X to the 29 and the 40th root. is our simplest form. All right, perfect. 20 minutes. Thank you.